All right, we're here for another episode of Lessons in Loss, Love and Resilience, and I'm here with my dear friend Kathy Rogers that we've met through the John Gordon Circle, and Kathy and I have a lot of synchronicities in our sad
Yes.
relationship in terms of why we met each other, but so blessed that we did in that way. And just I'll make it very known now. Kathy gives the best hugs. I did note that to the group when I got to meet her in person. So Kathy, thanks for joining me. I Most people know my story in terms of losing Elena, my daughter, in a mass shooting in 2018, and so it's been a way to really kind of bring people together and let them hear other stories of grief and resilience and their journeys because we all do this a little different, right? So why don't you, rather than me introduce you, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about your daughter.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. We don't like to be a member of this club, but we meet some of the most amazing people because we have this story to share. Well, my story's a little different. One of the things that connected you and I so quickly is I lost my daughter, Elena, too. We did not spell them the same, not even close, but we did connect on that level. I'm a breast cancer survivor. As a matter of fact, I went through breast cancer in 2018, and I it was not a fun journey. And I found some notes yesterday about that, but I did it, and my cancer was gone, and I'm fine, and I'm doing well. My mother did not have the same thing. She had metastatic breast cancer. I mean, ovarian cancer, and she lost her battle in February of 23. And then in August of 23, our daughter Elena was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. She was 29 years old. She was a mom, a 2 year old and a 4 year old. And her husband is amazing. But we lost her in February of 24. And it was not a fun journey, but when I saw the growth in her, that's where my story really blossomed. My faith grew a lot through my breast cancer journey, but then watching how God grew Elena's faith from the time of her diagnosis, because before she was really afraid. She was so afraid that she really did have cancer. And once she was diagnosed, she just looked me right in the eye and said, I'm not afraid at all. Jesus is with me. He's going to walk with me here on earth and for the rest of my life. So that's the story of, because we have a big family. Elena was one of three kids. We have six grandkids. All of our kids are married. And that to me was the struggle that I had in it is what is my role in nurturing my family through this hard loss?
After going through your own and then losing your mother to it. So Elena was diagnosed in August of 23 and she passed in February 24. So like
Yes.
5 months later.
Yes.
That was a very short battle with cancer.
Yes.
And I mean, some people you hear, 8, 10 years. Some people, fortunately, like yourself, that are lucky enough to or blessed enough to be able to overcome it in that way. And I've had one of my closest friends, and it's in my book, lost his wife to ovarian cancer when they
I,
were in their mid 20s,
yes.
and it was a tough battle because it's one of those that there's usually no coming back from ovarian, right?
Yes. Yes.
Breast cancer, it's there's so many different degrees.
Yes.
Well, glad to hear for you that you are a survivor and doing well, and now
Yes.
have some other things we'll talk about a little bit later in terms of telling your story. So that's awesome. So Elena, whether you spelled it wrong or not, we'll go ahead and assume it's spelled right. That's coming from somebody with a name Eric that's spelled extremely unusual too.
Yes.
Um, so the from the time, so when were you had your breast cancer journey, and when were you kind of diagnosed as breast cancer free? I know there's still some time till 10 years, right? Where you're still in
Yes.
remission or
What is so weird is I they don't really say you're cancer free. I mean, they got it all. They said, it's all gone. I did checkups and there's no sign of any cancer. We have the BRCA2 gene, which means that cancer really likes your reproductive system. And so I I had a double mastectomy. I had a hysterectomy. I mean, all of the things, we kind of took away all the things the cancer mite would like. And when we found my cancer, it was localized, and we had no reason to believe that it was anywhere else. And so that was not the case with my mom or with Elena. It had already spread to other parts of the body before it was actually discovered. And but mine, I mean, I don't really remember a formal, you're done. I rang the bell when I finished the chemo and then had the mastectomy after my chemo. And then they said, your margins are all clear. So I guess that would have been the formal time of, we want to keep an eye on it, which now I'm how many years out? 8.
Yeah.
So, there's really, I don't have any fear about it. I don't really have any fear about it, but you know, I've learned that fear is not really a good attribute when it comes to dealing with physical things anyway. I think it just feeds the
Well,
bad stuff.
that's a perfect segue into what was coming out of me as you were discussing that is you have 2 other children, a
Hmm.
son and a daughter, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So the BRCA gene did I say that right?
Yes, it's called BRCA2. There's a
BRCA2.
BRCA1
Okay.
and a
So
BRCA1.
is
Yeah.
that just something that affects females, or could that possibly be for your son? And then the secondary reason is the reason why I ask is after Elena's murder, our son studies in England. And
Yes.
so a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, how could you let him go so far, especially after what happened? And I'm like,
Hmm.
Elena was in California, in the safest city in America. Like, I can't let him. So with your daughter and your son, how is that? Obviously, your surviving daughter and son, that how is that? I mean, as a parent, there's so many parents I meet that are so fearful. They're like, I don't want my child to go out. I don't want this. So they're afraid to let go a little bit, or what? How have you done that on your journey? Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense because the battle is real. I mean, I think the first reaction to trauma like this is how can I control this? And I saw that in people, even at Elena's celebration of life service. You just see the fear in people of this could happen to me. And in our family, that really is true. We've all been tested, we're all positive, which it is a genetic thing. So I can remember I've dealt with that fear of what if it happens to someone else? What if it happens to another of our family members? And I've really had to just walk through that journey. I mean, in my mind of the black and white, I'm either afraid or I'm not. I have seen from my own journey, from Elena's journey, from my mother's journey, that if God asked me to walk through it, something good will come out of it. And so, I mean, I pray all the time, please don't make us walk through this again. And our friend John Gordon gave me a really big, wise thing one day. And he said, the God of the universe who created DNA is not necessarily going to just let a mutation exist forever. He can change that. It doesn't have to be something that you live in fear under forever. Because honestly, once you've had that diagnosis, which I think this is kind of off topic, but the irony of the doctor saying to me, well, if you ever have a concern, don't hesitate to call. I mean, once you've gotten a negative diagnosis, why would you ever hesitate to call? I mean, you did it the first time. Anyway, that's a whole different. But that you're sitting there in the doctor's office and going over blood work, and even the most minor of pauses can make your heart race, your anxiety go up. And So I just have to pray on a regular basis that the fear is not good to feed it. God, I trust you. I really do trust you. And you've proven to be faithful. Here's the thing I think about a lot, Eric. These crappy things of life are going to happen to us. There's not, I don't really think, especially like the thing that you suffered through with Elena, the things that we've gone through medically with our family. I mean, we were conscious, healthy people. We made good choices, but it didn't prevent what we went through. And I think we know we're going to have to go through crap. Are we going to just live there and be afraid of the next time crap is coming? Or are we going to let God use it as fertilizer to help our faith grow, to help our stories grow so that we can be encouraging to someone else? Because let's face it, there's just bad, evil, awful things that happen in this world. And as long as we're having to walk through it, what good can come out of that?
Yeah, I think, I couldn't agree more. And I think ultimately, to me, I look and think and I always say that I struggle with the God has a plan kind of a phrase. And I only
Yeah,
say that
yeah,
because it's hard when you lose a child to go, well, that
yeah,
was part of your plan. Like, who concocted
yeah,
that one? I
yeah.
think it's more, I think it's more us that need the plan. We need the ones to think that things are organized and structured. But then when you look at it and go, well, wait a second, I was supposed to see my daughter, walk her down the aisle, see her get married, see her
Yep.
have children, and I wasn't gifted with that. That I look and go, well, that's a hard one to accept in
Hmm.
that way. I do joke around a lot and say like, well, what if he's in charge of just organized chaos here? He's in control, but we're just not sure what
Yeah.
that's going to look like.
Uh-huh.
So, so yeah, it's one of those things that makes me wonder of how it is. But I couldn't agree with you more in terms of when we're so hyper controlling out of fear, which is why
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
so many people are hyper controlling. They're afraid
Yes.
to let go in that way. Then it really is something that we then are living in fear in our everyday,
Yes.
and that's tough to do. And that's why I just know how many people have asked me about Alex going that made me think, gosh, if we had this gene, like how would I? Because I
Yes.
can't understand. Like I can imagine, but I can't understand or know how you feel in this process, right?
Yeah.
Of the fact that the children are also positive for this gene, or at least carriers of that gene genetically.
Yeah.
Um, so how is it now? You're in the Texas area.
Yes.
How's it been for you in your community? And I mean, I frequently talk about how I feel our community is such a reason of how we did get through it and why we get through it and why I do what I do now and how much they embraced us in that way and how he embraced us in that way.
Yes.
How has it been for you in that journey?
Oh my. It's overwhelming when you think of all the unanticipated needs, the I didn't even know I was feeling this, but then you let me know and encourage me. Like a text message. I remember when I had cancer, I had friends that sent me a card every single week. Well, first of all, that is not my gift, so I really, really appreciated it. Or, you know, the day Elena died, I mean, I just really had a friend that called. What can I do for you? And I said, I just want cheese and crackers. And she showed up at my door with Triscuits and American cheese. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but that is just the microcosm example of how the community just showed up. And to me, the way I believe in my faith in Jesus is that God works us together in community. And so, like, he nudges you to give somebody a call on a day that you don't really know why you're calling them or why you're texting them, but you do. And then later you find out, man, they'd just gotten some really bad news, or it was just a bad grief day. We know how that happens, the ambushes that we can't even predict. And I have seen that in my physical community of living in Richardson, of the bakery owners around me, in my church community, my friends' community, my kids' friends' communities. it's just been a little overwhelming if you stop to think about it every single bit. But I believe that's how God compensates here on earth for the evil that we're going to have to go through anyway, that we can be there for each other. And I mean, there's even a verse in the Bible that talks about when we are comforted by God in the things that we go through, then we then can be that comfort for others. And I have just seen that show up my entire life, but have seen it more in the tragedies. It's the people who are willing to stand there and show up for you, even when they don't know what to say, when they're uncomfortable. And that's one of my favorite things about you is that you're out there saying, go do something anyway. We need to realize that we're there for each other. We need to get okay with dealing with grief with each other. We don't avoid the people who are going through grief because
Yeah,
sadly
yeah,
enough,
100%. And you were good to be able to know, can you get me some cheese and crackers? I mean, I remember I was like, the woman turned to me at Pepperdine. She goes, "We're going to put you up in the chancellor's house." And I'm thinking, okay, for a day or for a month? Like, I don't even know
right,
what's going on right now. And she goes, "What
right.
can I put in there?" I was like, "Bananas and water." Like I have no
Yeah,
idea. Like, again, am I cooking breakfast tomorrow? Am I, I
right,
just didn't know. And so
right.
I tell people all the time, like, if they ask, if they don't know the answer, then just show up. Show up with
That's
cheese and
right.
crackers. And you know what? If you like
That's right.
Triscuits and American cheese, and they brought you, Cars table water crackers and cheddar, it doesn't matter. They brought
That's
you,
right.
and I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, show up with lasagna, and if they don't want it, let them throw it away, and don't take offense to it.
I
Or if they say, we
agree.
just have so much food, we don't need this, don't take offense to it. They see you standing in front of them, right? And they see you going, I'm here for you. I wanted to bring you something. And that's just a message of love and
Right,
kindness and friendship
right,
that it's more than words. And so the problem is so many people are like, well, I don't want to show up with Mexican food. What if they don't like Mexican food? It's like
right,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you show up with, just show up, right?
right. Well,
And
and I
so
just had
we
an
had the
idea.
same,
I just had an
yeah, no, go
idea
ahead.
while you were talking. If you need a prop to show up for someone, find that prop. Maybe it's cookies, maybe it's bread, maybe it's a meal, but just show up. And if you need that prop, you need to just think of it as a prop. I mean, hopefully you're meeting a need, but if you're not, you just got in front of someone who now knows that you care about them. Whether you whether you hit the bullseye, you hit the target. Yeah, I
Well, and
love
I
that.
think ultimately, imagine this. Let's say you're gluten free and I show up with cookies. You're like, oh, thank you. I'm gluten free. And at some point, I would hope that as friends, I would be able to look at you and go like, I had no idea you were gluten free and I love cookies. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
just thought maybe if it brought you a little smile,
Yes.
because those are the pieces of, like, again, it's just a fog. I turned to a friend yesterday. We came home from Southern California, and they had a procession when her body was finally released from the coroner
Remember.
because of how
Yeah.
she died. They had a whole procession in Napa, and I saw a friend that I've known forever yesterday, and I happened to be chatting with him, and I said, "Were you in town?" Because he's part of the police department. I said, "Were you back from Southern California, like working here again, and or were you around at this time?" And he goes, "Eric, I drove your brother in the procession," and I'm like, wow, I'm so sorry. Like, I had no idea. And he's
Yes.
like, you don't have to apologize. Like, it was a blur. Like, I don't remember. There was a
Yes.
sea of people, like, and I'm just kind of looking around, like, what is happening right now, other than my daughter's body's here and we need to take her to the cemetery, which, that
Yes.
she's just escorted from Southern California. And so in that scenario, it was, again, no intention to be like for me to hurt his feelings, or and it meant so
Right.
much that he was there. At the
Right.
same time, I just, like, but now that he told me that, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And there's just a slight trigger where I just turn and go, gosh, that's really awesome. Like, I didn't, like, there's little pieces, that those nuggets that you do. We ran into somebody randomly at a birthday party on Saturday night, and Hannah looks at me because we both joke around about how all of a sudden we are like, gosh, I remember this person. Where is it from? Because now it's
Yeah.
like high school. college, work,
Yes.
the kids, you name it. Similar to the communities you just said, church, whatever.
Yes.
And now she looks over at me and she goes, I totally recognize this person. And I said, she gave us a mug with Elena's picture on it.
Oh,
And it was one that I used every single morning for coffee. And finally it broke. And I
oh,
remember how a friend who accidentally broke it when they was helping with the dishes, she was so upset. And I was like, do not worry. It's on Shutterfly. I'm going to make
yes.
another one because this
Yes.
person did this for me and I love it. And so I now have two of those cups,
I love that.
slightly larger in size because I like a bigger coffee, but it just meant so. And she's like, oh my God. And so Hannah looks at me, she goes, oh my gosh, that's right. You love that mug. And so it was just this connection to someone that we don't know well, but is just such
Right.
a wonderful person. And it just kind of makes you smile in that moment. So yeah, community's been so immense for us. And I really try to encourage others in their journey to be open to the community piece,
Yes.
because
Yes.
that's very, very hard for the balance. I mean, 2 days ago, I had a met with a friend who had lost her daughter, and she said to me her other daughter's friends are trying to like be friends, but they don't want to bring up the topic in
Right.
to not to upset her. And I
Right.
thought, gosh, that's awesome and sucks all at the same time. You know that they're
Yes.
trying to respect it, but
Yeah.
also it's like it's okay to sit in it. I tell people all the time,
Yes.
like sit with them. Just go,
Yes.
hey, can I buy you a coffee if you want to talk? I'd love to hear it. If you don't, that's okay.
Yes.
Just sit with them. You know.
Well, that's one of my favorite things is I think in the Jewish culture, sitting Shiva is like just, and I think it's more structured than I actually give it credit for as far as the timing and frame, but you just sit. You're just there. And I think if we can have that framework in our heads and be willing to do that, the problem is it's not comfortable. And
Mm-mm.
it's already a sad situation. And to be able to be mature enough to care about others enough to sit there quietly, uncomfortably in a sad situation takes a lot of guts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we just have to keep saying we're responsible to be those people's that the community for that situation.
Hmm.
Let's be willing to do that. Let's be willing to do it. And it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. And we're not going to know what to do sometimes, but we're still there. And here's the other thing that I caution people: do not respond to whatever their response is. They don't know what they're doing. They may not even remember that you texted them or that they should have responded to you. It is not a judgment on what you did because grieving people, you never know. Some people grieve more privately. And we just need to respect that and know, hey, I'm being obedient to what I think God's calling me to do, to reach out to you. And that's the end. There's not a synergy that's necessarily going to happen in the midst of grief. But one day you're going to feel that too, that someone gave back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Another friend lost her mom, and she told me, she's like, it's been 7 years, and my sister and I, it's really been hard on our relationship. And I said, okay, like, why has it been hard? Just out of curiosity. And I think you and I can ask people questions that others,
Yes.
if they know our story, that others
Hmm.
can't ask without them getting defensive. And
Right.
she says, well, I just didn't feel, she was really like she wasn't really mourning and grieving in the way that I was. And I just looked at her and I said, but she might be looking at you thinking she wants to be strong for you because she's seen how tied you are and how emotional you are in the process. That doesn't mean she's not grieving behind closed doors when she's comfortable to do so. And
Right.
I said, we can't judge each other's grief. We all, like if I'm crying every 10 minutes and you're not, that doesn't mean I'm grieving harder. It's
Right.
just how my emotions and how it's all hitting and such too. So I try to tell people all the time, like there's no like I mean, barring the random situation, everybody that says something, their intentions are good. right?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
but
Yes.
many times they're saying what would make them comfortable.
Right.
Like for example, then let me ask you this. I used the phrase when I just was speaking at a local university or at a university back east about, how to communicate in and around grief and trauma and talk to people. And I was like, look, there's no perfect way to do this. I said, let's take an example. Strong Christian woman. So you come to mind when I say that. So my example was strong Christian woman
Uh-huh.
loses their daughter
Uh-huh.
and someone says to them, well, she's with God now. Now, in your journey, you might, or she's home, she's with him, and you could turn and go like, thank you. Or you might be at a point where you're still a little angry,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that when you receive that message, yeah, it might not go over as well as you would hope.
That's
But
right.
if you were saying that because you're a strong Christian woman to everybody you meet that loses somebody in your head, that's what you would want to hear, but maybe
Right.
not today.
Right.
And so I usually tell people like, if you do say that and it doesn't go over well, just say, I apologize. I didn't know what to say. I just wanted you to know that I was thinking about you and about your daughter
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and walk away. Don't take offense to it. Just own it. Did, so did you have experiences like that, or how was it with people communicating
Y-
to and with you?
some of the most interesting things to me were when I would find myself, whether it was right after Elena passed, or maybe I think this even happened at her celebration of life service or whatever, but the number of people that would say, oh, I'm just so shocked. What happened? Well, I might not want to discuss that right now, and then I find myself comforting them. And it seemed a little backwards to me at the time, but I just said, well, thank you, God, that you're letting me help somebody else because it did seem a little, and I think the raw, the grief, is that a word? Probably not. More raw, the grief
It is
than
now.
that, that people really, if they really recognize what they were saying, they would regret it. So maybe it's a protective thing that they don't even know what they're saying. And I just think the biggest thing we can give to each other is grace. Like you said, I mean, the intent 99.9% of the time is good. And I would say that 0.101% of the time, they're just ignorant. I mean, not in a bad way. They just are, they're not trying to be cruel. They just know I'm supposed to do something and I'm doing it. Um, I just think that we just have to give grace to people. And I mean, yes, I've heard all kind of bizarre things. People who wanted to know all the details, which the interesting part about that is that Elena was very private through her whole journey. She knew what fear had done to her and her decision making and her anxiety. And she did not want to feed that. She didn't want to explain things in a caring bridge. She didn't want to go on social media with it. We didn't even really discuss the details of it. She and her husband dealt with that themselves. That's fine. They're adults. They get to make those decisions. And I think that was from a good place. But then the curiosity of people that I believe for a majority of time have to do with how does this apply to me? Just in a natural way. I'm not saying in a selfish way, but they want to know, I want to prevent this from happening to my family. It's like we said earlier. They're just like very curious of want to know the details of your cancer, want to know the details of how you discovered it, want to know all these things. And to me, it's so that they can put it in this algorithm to say, okay, what are the chances of this happening to me? If you look at that closely, that's kind of selfish, but I just think it's humanity. And I think that that's why when we're going through those awful times of chemo, grief, whatever, grace is the biggest thing that we can give to other people. Their curiosity is not mean. It just might be a little self-centered.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'm hearing you loud and clear. I did ask how Elena passed earlier, so you're saying that was me being selfish in that way. No, I'm
No,
kidding.
no, no,
I'm just giving you a hard time.
no.
You
I'm
you and
talking
I know we
about,
joke around about grief humor all
yes,
the time. I'm
yes,
just giving you
no. But
um,
you make me aware of how I say it because, there's asking the details, but
yeah,
then there's
yeah.
asking the details.
Yeah. Well, and there's also, again, it comes down to timing, right? It's
Yeah.
also, this is
Yeah.
something that you've been in the process, and we'll talk about in a minute of you, writing a book recently that just released, and how that's been in the process. I think ultimately for me, it was also understanding when to say certain things and
Yes.
others. I mean, just even getting off of social media would be, I think, the only times I ever got comments, like, other than a letter of conspiracy that came that she was never really killed and it was all a government,
Yeah. I
blah blah
read that
blah,
in your
whatever, from
book.
some guy hiding in his mom's basement somewhere, whatever. Not that he's normal, right? But social media is where people will put some pretty nasty things out there because they can
Yes.
hide behind it. So just getting off of it, don't
Yes.
let that, like, change you, in my opinion. So, okay, question for you, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I
Okay.
heard a cool story. I have a quick story after you tell me, of something that happened this week. But a friend told me, she goes, "Oh, I loved in your book, about signs." And she says, "I asked my father before he passed, and he said he'd be coming as a hummingbird or look for hummingbirds." And she says, and she goes, "One day, not long after he passed, we happened to open the door, and a hummingbird flew into our daughter's room and sat on her bed for like a couple minutes and then flew out." Like, and so I told people, I said to somebody the other day who's an atheist, I said, "Hey, here's what I will say. Whether Because he's recently gotten signs and,
Yeah.
like, things, and I said, look, here's the thing you have to
Yeah.
see. If you take the God piece out of it and you just say these are things, if they make you smile because they remind you of your loved one, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what your belief is.
Right.
These are things to you." So
Yeah.
I asked that with like, prefacing, did anything like that happen to you, or do you get things like little moments where it just makes you think of her, or is there something that jumps out that every time you see it you think of Elena, or is it just every day because she's a part of your life?
It's very interesting because Elena would be eating this up. She was much more ethereal, like saw signs and things. And she was just empathetic and just intuitive. I mean, that it was just kind of how she was. I'm a lot more practical. I don't even really, I don't even really have big, deep dreams, like I'm just not that creative in nature. But I have had a couple of dreams that were just brought me so much comfort of Elena being okay, of Elena checking on us. And to me, it's more impactful because of those things, because I'm not that way. It seems to have a more real, just indelible mark on. I don't know how that happened. I don't know why it happened, but the comfort that it brought, the peace that it reinforces, um, is great. Now, I don't I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I have this friend who really talks about how thin the veil is between here and the spiritual realm, and how, you know, there are times when we just really feel so close to God that we really feel like we could just almost poke and see what that is. Now, I don't believe that our human bodies can handle all of that spirituality all at one time. And so that's probably why we're protected from it. But I don't judge it. And I believe that it can. It just brings comfort and a good memory. And it just reinforces that, man, what a blessing that we got to have our loved ones while we did. One thing I discovered this in the past week, I remember as a young married, we had a miscarriage. And I really had this fear that I would never be a mom. And then I felt God really did kind of speak to my heart and say, no, you're going to be a mom. And then you're like, okay, good, I'm going to be a mom. And then you hear of people who go through giving born stillbirths, or a child, a preschooler that died of SIDS, or a first grader that gets cancer, the things that happen. And in those times, I believe God was saying to me or teaching me, you don't have any guarantees. Those dreams that you have for each one of your kids, there is no guarantee. You do not know how long. There's evil in the world, and times we don't get to last forever. So I think that that gave me I don't know, maybe this precursor of don't take any day for granted. And so that's why I think I can look at the 29 years we had with Elena and say, don't you think the mom who only has had a miscarriage would love 29 years?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
there are so many, and I think about the covered wagon days when you said goodbye to your 15-year-old to her with her new husband and said, "Hope life treats you well," because you're not seeing each other again. And I just think there are perspectives that we have in our modern day culture that
Yes.
feed our disappointments that don't have to be our reality.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. And it's funny, I talk about a little bit my journey with faith before, because I'm a very tangible person like you are, where
Yes.
I was like skeptical and things of the sort. And my journey was with, I had so many friends of different, ethnicities,
Yes.
religions, faiths, atheist, agnostic, Mormon, Catholic, Jewish, you name it, right?
Huh?
And I was like, gosh, everybody's wrong except for one of you, and
Yeah.
was the way I looked at it, right?
Yeah.
And now I look at it and go, well, what if none of us are wrong? What if we're all on a journey?
Yeah.
However you're getting there, right? And there's a lot of things when in the religiosity piece that I still, that I have questions about, but that's my journey. But I look at it and say the difference was after all of these things, like this is what helped me find my faith, right? This
Yes.
is what helped me find it. So those things for me, again, I tell people like, look, this is not, I don't know that it's Elena, but there are things that make me smile about it, about this. And I'll give you my example, is 2 days ago, Hannah looks at me and says, can you put the snow gear up, because we were done, our son went back to college, and she's like, let's just put it in the tote and throw it up there. So I did, and then she goes, hey, there's the other tote that has a couple things left in it, can you throw it in there? Now this is all stuff that we just bought these totes, we kind of reorganized the garage, whatever. And so
Yeah.
it's been the last year and a half that this is all there. So as we do, she comes out, I grab the last of it, I throw it into the tote, and I get ready to close it, and she goes, what's that? And on the top of it somehow there was a piece of paper, and it was Elena had written the lyrics to the song For Good from Wicked.
Yes.
So I mean, Elena passed 7 years ago, right?
Yes.
And so this, we've never seen this before, and for whatever reason, in a random tote that just, so somehow that made it through multiple totes and around
Right.
whatever, and ends up in this box, that I start reading the lyrics, and the lyrics are very poignant about, like, like the people that come
Yes.
into our life and how important it is to understand and learn. And I'm just reading this thing, and both of us are now in tears.
I
And I said,
guess.
these are those moments that, whether someone says it's a sign or not, I look at it and go, they made us think about how blessed we were with the 18 years that we had,
Yes.
because we have a friend that lost his daughter to cancer at 3, and just seeing how inspirational he and his wife are and how they handle it has
Yes.
been amazing. Because I'm like, man, your family trips were to the hospital. We got to try. Like, I just
Yes.
felt so lucky, right?
That's so true.
Yet this summer, I'm going to be traveling to see Elena's best friend get married, and I'm going to be a mess. And I told
Yes,
her
you
already.
will.
I said, by the way, I'm going to be a mess. She goes, don't worry, I will be too. So it's one of those, like one of those moments to just understand that we are so fortunate in these moments, in the time that we have together, and take that in the way that. But yeah, it's funny to me, because I thought about it too. I was like, unless you ask somebody what they're going to come back as a sign, how is that really a sign? Like, it just makes me like, it makes me get super, like, my grief humor starts to come out. And so anyway, so let's talk for a minute before we finish about, you've recently received or released a book.
Yes. Yes.
We're in a book club together. Is this your second book or is your first book?
No, this is my first book. And I am not one of those people that said, oh, I can't wait to write a book. But as I would tell people my story, as I would meet people, as they would be shocked at my perspective over the cancer, over the loss, over just dealing with the crud, I I realized the times in my life when I see someone deal with something differently than is the norm, your perspective kind of goes, huh, there's an option. And so I thought maybe my story, and someone forced me to do it really, but maybe my story can bring hope. And so I got to work with Catherine Gordon at Gordon Publishing. And I also worked with a ghostwriter to get my words down because I'm a talker, not a writer. And
I know
it
that
just
feeling.
it just came together. It just came together, and it came together relatively quickly. Like we started in June and I was done in October. Now it's not a huge book, but the thing about writing a book, and I I I think in your book you even mentioned this. Somebody said, "So did it help you with the processing to write?" No, it made me have to dredge up a lot of crap that I probably didn't ever want to remember again to do it. So now I don't usually say that when people ask me, but it's true. There are things in
Yeah.
there that I could have gone a long time without. I learned from it. Let's move on. Or just dealing with the things that it is personal. And it's personal to 15 of us that were in our immediate family. And so to deal with that gently, to really just tell my story, my perspective, and really my faith. My faith as a Christian has grown through these trials I've been through. That is not me telling you that that is the only way you can deal with grief, with trauma, with illness, but it's my story. And I just want to give you that perspective. I want to give you that truth of the reality that I've lived through. And if it helps you, great. I'm not telling you that I am the end all be all. I'm just sharing my story. And I get excited about that because that's one more redemption in our story of grief that we've had to go through, Eric. Why not give somebody else hope? Because there's always going to be something that we need to look through the dark lens to get to hope.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I mean, you sound like me on repeat with just your voice. It's funny because I was the same. I'm like, I don't know how to write a book. I tried putting stuff down a few times, and finally I just started writing, and then I was like 6 pages in, going, "This is stupid," and I'd stop. And so randomly, you heard the story of how I met Holly, and then she
Yes.
goes, "Just I want you to tell me 30 short stories or 20 short stories, and then we're gonna figure out how we weave it together."
Yes.
And so I wrote the book, and then Holly helped me in so many ways, like make it flow into the fashion that it is now. And I mean, even talking about the cathartic journey, for some people ask that, and I for me it's more being fulfilled to help others in their journey, similar
Yes.
to what you're saying.
Yes.
In our scenario, a lot of people don't understand Hannah still hasn't read the book.
Yeah.
And she said, she's like, Eric, it's hard for me to read it in the
Yes.
house. Like, we need to be somewhere. And then when we're on vacation, it's like, and and because there's, like the first half of the book is, the all of the details. With that scenario, it's, we lived this, right? So for her
Yes.
to relive, especially that first half of the book, which is more about what happened, and then after that, it's the post-traumatic growth that came out of it in terms of
Yes.
new relationships and faith and spirituality and personal strength and such. And so it's, a lot of people go, "What do you mean you haven't read it?" And she's looking at me like, because I'm supposed to speak at a book club this weekend. And I said, "Hannah, they invited you to come, and we can go out to dinner after." She goes, "But isn't it weird if I'm in there for a book club meeting?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't read the book,
Yeah.
like." And so I was like, "Yeah, I'll just pick you up after if you want." But as long, like for me, I said, "I'm okay as long as I have your blessing to move forward with it. That I painted
Yes.
you in a light that you understand, and how much it's really we've been there for one another." But it's been pretty amazing and super, gosh, just unbelievably heartwarming to hear some of the responses people have sent me.
Yes.
Like people, victims advocates that have reached out and said, "I wish I had read this before dealing
Yes.
with some other scenarios," and others that have lost loved ones. And I was like, wow, that really means a lot. I mean, again, it's just telling our story, and there's no perfect way to do this. There's just your way to do it, but the more tools in our toolbox when we walk up to fix this thing is a lot more doable. So when did you released it just recently, correct? First of the year?
Well, yes, it was one of those things. It actually got released in December. And the way we decided the publishing team decided to, oh, we're just going to put it out there. Nobody finds the book, but we're going to do that instead of trying to do a pre sale. And amazingly, I have some very creative friends who found the book and started buying the book. And so we decided, no, 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 we need to own this. We need to really release it. So what we've decided to do, people are already purchasing the book and we're working on, the publicity and all that stuff. But our official launch date of the book, even though it will have been out for 2 months, February 16th of 2026, because on February, did I say 6th or 16th?
16.
February 16th of 2023, my mother died. February 16th of 2024, we laid Elena to rest. And so February 16, 2026, we are taking back that day for good. And we are going to redeem that day so that February can be more of a joyful month. But I like that you brought up that Hannah's never read your book, because that is something that I have come to grips on. The people closest to us may not really be able to go down that path. They may not want to, even though I don't think it's that personal, it can trigger emotions, and I have to be okay with that. That's not my responsibility to make sure that they give me good feedback, but that I know that it's out there and whoever it's helping is great. And that's all we do, right? We just kind of throw it out there, and then hopefully it's beneficial to each person that reads it, and that they'll have a blessing and they'll realize everybody has a story to tell. And we would love to
Yeah.
hear yours.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I really appreciate it. Well, I've already ordered my copy. But
Thank you.
I will wait, and I will start reading it on February 16th. How's that?
That's great. That's
Um,
great. I love that. I
so,
love that.
well, Kathy, I really appreciate you joining me on this episode, and I like I said, I to you before we started, it's been amazing to see how many people have said, I just like hearing other people's journeys because we're all doing this different, and it helps
Yes.
me understand, and it helps me kind of embrace my grief journey. And so I really appreciate you and taking the time, and hope we don't have too much dropout in the process when we play it back. If not, we're gonna have
Me
to do this
too.
again. So
We will. We will. But, and I want to say thank you for connecting so many people, because if just one little bit of resonates from each episode with someone who's walking through this, then I think it can inspire healing. And I think you're doing a great job of covering and engaging in stories that can bring hope to people who are walking through grief. And I commend you for that. And I hope God continues to bless that for you, Eric.
well, thank you, Kathy. Have a good day. Thank you.
You too.